I would like to request respected Professor P Koya and this member of Government of India to deliver a short speech in connection with this today's state seminar on armed forces special power and India.
Talking about, I don't know whether you understand my English. I'm sorry I couldn't speak Manipuri anyway. Before I start talking about the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, I pay the tribute of the people of Kerala to one of the bravest ladies of Manippur, that is Irom Sharmila. And for your information, we are one of the very few newspapers in Kerala which has been carrying the story of Irom Sharmila. We introduced her to the readers of the state of Kerala, and we have been giving complete and total support to her for her brave struggle, which, as I understand, has entered the 12th year, which itself is a record in the history of any non-violent struggle for the repeal of a draconian, cruel, anti-democratic law called AFSPA. I know that Manipur is the land of jewels, and Irom Sharmila is one of the rarest of jewels that Manipur has produced. Because only a lady of extraordinary courage, bravery and perseverance can fight the state. The Indian state is very powerful, you know. Very, very powerful is the Indian state. It has got the 4th largest military in the world. Even though it is a democracy, there are so many security laws which go against the grain of the basic democratic principles. So a small diminutive poet called Irom Sharmila is taking on an Indian state, which itself is a great example of a non-violent struggle for the restoration of human rights in the small state of Manipur. We know that for the past 60 years, our country has been going through many trials and tribulations. And even though the founding fathers of our country, including Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi, and such great personalities like Abul Kalam Azad and Rafi Ahmed Kidwai and so many other people, were giving importance to the basic human rights and basic civil rights. And in the preamble of our constitution, we say that we are the people who are determined to establish a secular democratic republic on the basis of equality, on the basis of equity, and on the basis of equanimity. And the basic foundation of our constitution are the fundamental rights, which nobody can deny unless the country itself is facing a great threat from outside. Unless the country is facing a military invasion from outside, no power in India, constitutionally, no power in India can take away the fundamental rights. But unfortunately, it is quite unfortunate that even in a democratic republic like ours, we have so many security laws, and among the most severe, cruel security laws, we have the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. I don't know why the people are not taking to the streets against the Armed Forces Special Powers Act prevalent in Manipur. At the moment, there is a nationwide debate going on about the Armed Powers, this AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. And citizens of Manipur, as people of Manipur, I'm sure that you understand what it means by the special powers exercised by the armed forces in this small state. And in another state, that is in north, that is in the northern part of the country, that is Jammu and Kashmir, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act has been in force for the past 2 decades. And now we know that a great debate is going on in that state. The Umar Abdullah, the son of Farooq Abdullah, is considered to be a chamcha of our Home Minister Chidambaram. He himself is talking against the Armed Forces Special Powers Act at the moment. He has been called a chamcha of Chidambaram, the Home Minister. Somebody is ruling, receiving the orders from the North Bloc and South Bloc in Delhi. Somebody who is not taking care of the fundamental rights of the Kashmiri people. Somebody who got less than 5% votes in the last election. He is the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir because he is protected by the central government in Delhi. Only because of that. The moment the central government withdraws the security support to Umar Abdullah, he becomes a zero. He will be out of the picture. We know that. But even such a puppet of a chief minister is now talking about the withdrawal or the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in Jammu and Kashmir, because he cannot face the heat of the people's anger coming up. I hope you know that people from Manippur should know what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. And people in Jammu and Kashmir should know what is happening in Manippur. In Jammu and Kashmir, the State Human Rights Commission itself has said that more than 10,000 people have been taken away by the armed forces, by the security forces. They were killed and they were buried in unknown graves. This is not a statement coming from a human rights activist like me. It is a statement authenticated by the State Human Rights Commission itself. The State Human Rights Commission, because of the tremendous pressure created by the people's non-violent demonstration and protest and marches, the State Human Rights Commission, which itself is always in the pocket of the ruling class, which you know, the Human Rights Commissions are just camouflage, just the makeup to show that you are interested in the human rights. They have no powers. The only privileges that they enjoy is they get a lot of money as salary and as other allowances. They get a government car, they can travel throughout the state. People were buried by the security forces. So that's why Umar Abdullah is now talking about the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Nowhere in the world in a democratic polity, I say, we are not talking about a military dictatorship, just like Egypt in the past or any other military dictatorship. We are talking about a democracy, one of the largest democracies in the world. We say that we are the largest democracy. We have more than 120 crores of people voting every 5 years, electing our people. That is a great thing for a country like ours. A democracy is not a small thing, it is a great thing. We should be protected, we should be supported, we should be always strengthened, but not anywhere in the world in a democracy. And even to shoot him dead if he suspects, an ordinary soldier suspects that the man in front of him is a terrorist or an extremist or a fundamentalist or a separatist. Nowhere in the world such an act exists. Such acts exist only when times of emergency it happens. Only when times of emergency. And when 1958, the Indian Parliament passed the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the ruling class, that is the Prime Minister as well as Home Minister and Defense Minister, said that the provisions of the Act would not be used unnecessarily to suppress the democratic spirit of a people. There was a promise in the Parliament itself. A promise given by the Prime Minister, the Home Minister and the Defense Minister. They said that they would be using this Armed Forces Act and such security laws, so many security laws, only in rarest of the occasions. and not to suppress democratic dissent. Dissent is a part of any democratic process. If there is no dissent, there is no democracy. If you don't have the freedom to express yourself, then there is no democracy. We know that. Dissent is the fuel which maintains democracy. If you do not dissent in a democratic polity, in a democratic society, it means that the society itself is becoming non-democratic. And the people who passed this draconian act in 1958 promised the world, promised the people of India, promised the nation, promised the country that this act would not be used, would not be misused, and would be used only when there is an extraordinary crisis in a state or in a province. But just like any other security law, you can take my word for that, any other security law, the politicians and the ruling class have been misusing it right from day one. That is an unfortunate fact. For example, in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, you can see that anybody can pick it up by the ordinary policeman and put him in jail, alleging that he is a Maoist or a terrorist or an extremist. Very simple as that. Dr. Vinayak Sen was in jail for more than 1 year, 2 years at least, and the High Court said that he could not be released. He was taken to jail under the Public Safety Act of Chhattisgarh, and it was only at the end of it, because of the tremendous pressure coming from the people from all over the world, the human rights movements, human rights organizations, human rights activists were talking about Vinayak Sen, and because of the popular anger against the incarceration of Dr. Vinayak Sen, he was released finally. And what was his crime? The police said that he had written a letter to a Maoist outside the jail. That itself is a crime under the Public Security Act. In Kashmir, people like you, especially the youth, who are angry at the suppression. In Kashmir, for example, we know that in Kashmir there is one soldier for every 6 Kashmiris. 500,000 soldiers doing the rounds in Kashmiri villages and streets. That is 1:6. For every 6 Kashmiri, you have a soldier. You have bankers, you have pickets, you have the military vehicles running throughout the night. You have to show your identity card just to go to the ration shop or to buy anything, any provision from an ordinary grocery store. That is the fate of the Kashmiris for the past 2 decades. And who is responsible for this? The total responsibility of this kind of suppression of the democratic process falls upon the ruling class, which never acknowledged the right of the Kashmiris to express their opinion in a democratic way. I think it was towards the end of the 90s that there was a chance that the opposition parties would come to power in Kashmir through a free election. Free election. Only once Kashmiris had to witness a free election without interference, without intervention, without rigging. And in that election, there was a chance that the Kashmiri opposition parties, instead of the so-called National Congress or so-called Indian National Congress or the National Conference, instead of these 2 parties, the opposition parties were about to come to power through a free election. But our government, our Delhi government, central government, refused to acknowledge the results of that election, and that was the beginning of the armed resistance in Kashmir. So in a democratic polity, when you don't allow people to express their express their dissent in a free, unhindered, uninterrupted way, then some people would take to violence. We cannot find fault with such a situation. And for the past 2 decades, this kind of Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the provisions have been used by them. And that is the case with any security law. When the ruling class, the powers that be, when they think that there is a threat against the established interests, a threat against their existence, a threat against the whole system, their system, then the ruling class and the powers that be will go for such draconian laws. That was the case with TADA, you know that, Terrorism and Anti-Disruptive Activities Act, in which, you should understand all these things. Under Terrorism and Terrorism and Disruptive Act, if you make a confession before the policeman, if you make a confession before the policeman, it can be taken as an evidence. And you know that the police system and the police can make you confess anything in the world. Police can make you confess anything in the world. You can even say that you are not even a human being, you are a monkey before the police. Such is the terror created by the police system in our country, anywhere in the world for that matter. So a confession made before the police, which is not permissible in a court, under the law passed by the British. Indian Evidence Act was passed during the 1890s, during the time of the British. And in the British Act, a confession made before the police is not permissible in the court as evidence. Because even the British knew that any policeman can accrue confession from a poor, helpless man in a lockup. And in TADA, that special concession given by the British was taken away. There was a tremendous opposition to such a law. And because of the anger of the people, it was repealed later. And you know what happened? 70,000 people were put in prison under TADA. 99% of them were Muslims. 99% of them were Muslims. Only very few Dalits, very few Sikhs were taken and put in jail. And some people still languish in jail who had been originally arrested under TADA. And then after that, TADA was repealed, and then we got the NDA government, NDA administration, you know that, National Democratic Alliance, led by the BJP. They introduced a POTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act, which is more terrible than the earlier TADA. More terrible than the earlier TADA. And there was again anger against such repressive laws in the country, fortunately, because people are aware that when you allow the government, when you allow the ruling class, when you allow the powers that be to take away one of your liberties, if you do not resist it, if somebody takes away one of your liberties, if you do not resist it, that liberty is lost forever for a citizen. There's a fundamental rule in a democracy. If you don't fight taking away liberty from you, you lose that liberty forever. And POTA came, once again, mostly poor people, poor Muslims were taken into jail. There are hundreds and thousands of youth still languish in our country under POTA, even though there is no POTA now. POTA was repealed again. What they did was incorporating some of the provisions of the POTA in an older law called Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, UAPA. Incorporating some of the provisions of the law of the POTA into the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So as the saying goes, some of might remember that is 1975, Mrs. Gandhi declared emergency in the country. Most of you might have born after that, so just to remind you about that. In 1975, Mrs. Gandhi declared emergency in the country because she was afraid that she would lose power. Not because that the anti-national forces are conspiring against the Indian democracy. It was not that. And after that, since 1970s, what we witness is that some of the emergency laws have become a part of the existing laws in the country, and these laws are being used by the security forces to suppress the democratic dissent, even if that dissent is expressed non-violently. I do not agree with the violent reaction to this kind of violent form of democratic dissent. We should disagree with that. But even in non-violent dissent, in non-violent protest, in non-violent demonstration of anger against such repressive laws, this Armed Forces Special Powers Act and UAPA was extensively used to suppress the right of the people to struggle for economic and political justice. It was used for political purposes. That is what is happening in Andhra Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh, in Jharkhand, and even West Bengal, your neighboring state. All these provisions were used for political purposes. You can arrest anybody and call him a terrorist. You can arrest anybody and call him a Maoist. You can arrest anybody and call him a Muslim fundamentalist. You can arrest anybody and call him a separatist. And everybody is happy, arresting a terrorist, arresting a Maoist, arresting a separatist. Everybody is happy about that. The so-called national media will ignore this breach of democratic principles. They will ignore the breach of democratic principles. I should remind you against what happened in Delhi a few weeks ago when Anna Hazare was holding the court. So many people were riling around him. The Ramlila ground was full of people talking about fighting against corruption. He was offering fast unto death for 1 week. But he was not talking about the security laws. Anna Hazare was the star figure for many, many days. The TV channels were running 24-hour live programs every day as if they were watching a reality show. But no TV channel was talking about Jerome Shapila. No TV channel was talking about the unmarked graves in Jammu and Kashmir. And no TV channel is talking about the poor Adivasis put in jail, dubbing them Maoists. And no TV channel is talking about the poor Muslim youths put under jail for the bomb blast organized by the Sangh Parivar. Only last week, 9 innocent people were given bail after 5 years. Given bail after 5 years in the first Malagaon blast. We know that the blast in Maharashtra, the blast in Hyderabad, the blast in Samchoda Express, all these bomb blasts were organized by none other than the people belonging to Sangh Parivar. Everybody knows that. The kingpin of that conspiracy, that is Asimananda himself, confessed before the police without any terror. The police was not beating him out of his senses, no. He was never put in lockup. He was never beaten by the police. He was never put under pressure. He was himself self-consciously confessing that he was responsible among with other people for staging the bomb blast. In Malaga, the first bomb blast, about 36 people had been killed. In the second bomb blast, about 8 people had been killed. In Samjhoda Express, about 60 people, especially from Pakistan, had been killed. In Hyderabad, Makkah blast, 14 people had been killed. In Nantur, a bomb factory accidentally exploded, run by them, in which 3 people had been killed. In Goa, they were carrying the bombs to a carnival, the government carnival, and accidentally the bomb went off, 3 people had been killed. And totally 6 or 7 blast cases, and as Simananda said, everything had been done by them. People belonging, subscribing to the ideology of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. The so-called patriots, so-called nationalists, about whose nationalism we cannot question even. They say that they are the defenders of our republic. And in the first Malaga blast, the police arrested some 10, 12 people, alleging that it was done by them. There was a CBI inquiry which proved that these people, Asimananda and his minions, were responsible for this. But the Maharashtra police never asked for the bail of these innocent people. They were in jail for 5 years. In my country, in my state, there was an incident in Mara near Calicut in which 8 people, 8 RSS activists were killed by the Muslim family, by a Muslim family. It was a revenge killing. It was a revenge killing, nothing political about it, nothing communal about it. The relatives of one of the men killed in an earlier incident took revenge on them, and 8 people were killed. And the police refused to give bail to these culprits taken into custody and put in jail for 5 years. While in the first incident, even though 5 people were killed, all of them were given bail. So such a discrimination has been there, we know that. But our national media never talk about such things. They have Hana Hazare, they have anti-corruption fight, national campaign against corruption, but they don't talk about Irom Shambhala, they don't talk about Armed Forces Special Powers Act. I told you a debate is going on in Delhi about the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and the media generally favors the military high brass, the military command. Our defense minister, unfortunately, he is from Kerala. The defense minister doesn't talk anything against the opinions expressed by the military command. The military, the high brass, the top brass of the military says that they cannot fight the separatist forces anywhere in the country without a draconian law like this Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which is nonsense, pure nonsense. You will not be able to use violence against the expression of democratic dissent in any part of a democratic republic. Either it is Manippur, either it is Jharkhand, either it is Chhattisgarh, either it is Madhya Pradesh, either it is Andhra Pradesh, either it is Jammu and Kashmir. Only through military might and through violence you will not be able to talk. You will not be able to suppress real democratic dissent. So I conclude my remarks about this, with the whole situation which we will have to take into account, and we have to be careful about, we have to be vigilant about the liberties stolen away by the state. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, as the saying goes. If the people from Manipur suffer from this draconian law, people from Kerala should fight against it. That is what happened, I think, last two weeks ago. There was a big rally coming from Jammu and Kashmir to Manipur in support of your own Sharmila. Such small movements, which may not get media coverage, which may not get the attention of the national media, but such popular movements in the country, in different parts of the country, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in Maharashtra, in Rajasthan, and in Uttar Pradesh, small such moments will converge into a big movement through which we will be able to defend our democratic rights. I'm sure that this seminar has been organized by the Popular Front of India in connection with a large meeting in which there are so many people coming from different parts of the country to Delhi, Ram Leela grounds, where Nana Hazare was offering his fast unto death. A different meeting in which